Okay, welcome everyone to our every other or every third week joint meeting. I think this process is working out well so far. At this time, I will turn it over to our chairman to conduct the meeting.
All right, sir. Item number 2 on the agenda is an update on Williford School. And Dr. Jeffers, I stuck that back on there because I think we just got beyond this the other day when we got so involved in something else. So
Not a problem at all,
okay.
sir. And it may be a standing item if you,
Sure.
if that's your pleasure. Would you like me to provide that update?
Yes, sir. Indeed.
Staff is currently rapidly completing preparations for a recommendation to the full board. As we made this body aware, we are investigating and exploring the possibility of implementing a school-based health clinic. That is directly in response to the underperformance, the historical underperformance at Williford, and also the high aggregate level of needs at the school. It's our belief that by partnering with community stakeholders who have a history of success in both the physical, mental health arenas, as well as programming beyond the operational day, that we could potentially have a substantive impact at the school. We're completing joint meetings with OIC and Boys and Girls Club for possible implementation in year 1. We're excited about the progress with this initiative. Nash-Rocky Public Schools, if successful, will be positioned to open August 2018 with services in mental health and physical health for all students and community stakeholders, as well as extending AM and PM programming through an extended partnership with Boys and Girls Club. We're preparing an update at April 12th board meeting. We'll be able to share more specifics after that time.
All right. Any questions from our commissioners on that? Dr. Jeffers, I kind of followed the process of picking the firm to run the school down in Robeson County that I think pretty much.
ISD process?
Yes, sir. Pretty much volunteered to fall under that program, and I'm sure you have followed that as well as your school board members as well. And that process in itself made me believe even more, as probably the rest of our commissioners, is that that's just not a route we want to follow. When it was passed on a 7-4 vote who they picked, and then reading all the things, and really only had 2 to make application for it, it seemed to be somewhat political, like most things in our life this day and time. But it reiterated my total belief that that's just not what we need to happen to Williford Schools. So I hope the board, with your guidance, is on the track to prevent that from happening. You used the word historic data about the underperforming students. It is probably historic for a period of time, but there was a point way back there in life when Williford School did very well, but that probably was 58, 59 that I'm aware of. So things could have changed since that point in time. But I do appreciate the update. And how good do you and your board members feel about us keeping Williford School in the Nash-Rocky Mountain School System at this point in time?
I don't want to speak for the board, but we're very encouraged. And it's interesting. I think that's a very astute assessment that you made about how difficult the process was to navigate. For those who may not be familiar, there was a great deal of effort spent in hiring consultants to do the research nationally. And what they found was that it is really a mixed bag. There is no silver bullet, just like we said at the beginning of that whole process. But there are some truisms in the research, and authentic is always best. Folks that grew up in the challenge area and understand the dynamics of the stakeholders that you're trying to impact is always best. Having that consultation model is always a challenge because invariably they're going to go home at some point. When you own it, you own it. And so I hope that they're successful. But my recommendation to our board is that we can design a process that's authentic, that not only transforms the school, but seeks to work to transform the community in which that school's embedded.
Is the, excuse me, Mr. Belfield, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is the health clinic, possibility at Willowfoot, is that part of the mix to help? I mean, can you explain a little bit of what the thinking there is?
I absolutely can. Nash-Rocky Mount is listed nationally as a leader in chronic absenteeism. When you break down chronic absenteeism, there are several indices that it talks about. Aggregate poverty, access to physical and mental health care, the earning potential of the home, and the stability of the home environment. So when you have high levels of transiency, as we do, when you have high levels of aggregate poverty, and you have students who may not have been able to access quality early care, those problems translate into chronic absenteeism. And it's not a stretch to say if students aren't in our classes, they're not going to be as successful as they could be if we have them for a full 180 days.
Do you think the organization that chose those schools to look at the last time and eventually chose the one, is that an item that they're gonna give a lot of credit to, you hope, I guess?
Our belief is, well, the recommendations that I'm offering to the board are to allow them to maintain their autonomy. So at this point in time, what we're exploring at Willowfoot will not require an endorsement by DPI. But once we get on the other side of the process, if it's fully endorsed by the board, and I'll be happy to give you an update at that point, I think we'll be in a position where we control our own destiny as it relates to Willowfoot and ISD.
So, if I may, so just to be clear, basically the school-based clinic is one of several recommendations. It's kind of the first recommendation that has come to us of what will be a more of a multifaceted approach with respect to Willowfoot. Is that correct? Okay.
Well, what is the timeline, to just refresh us, Dr. Jeffries, on that next decision been made? Is it, again, this coming up year?
It would be the fall of
Okay.
2018-19.
Okay. Or the fall of 2018, okay. Is that in,
We'll engage in the assessments, the
Right.
statewide assessments, in May and June, and then they'll engage in their process. But that recommendation, they didn't initiate it this year unless there's a legislative change, Commissioner. It took place in the fall. It was November, I believe, when we were notified, correct?
that's kind of what I remember.
Yes, sir.
I just wondered about that. Anyone else?
Well, I was just gonna say, whatever you do, I don't see how you can pass the account that a lot of families in that area, well, I start to say unstable, but they move about. And they may be at Willowfoot 3 months, and then they're in another school district for maybe the rest of the year, or maybe in another 2. So from moving, if you don't have them for 180 days at the same place, to me, the progress is going to be a challenge, big challenge.
That assessment is accurate, Commissioner. And what we've done as a district is we've focused on broadening the network of services. You've heard about our increased partnership with communities and schools, where we embed professionals who are trained in the social affective arena. They broker and coordinate with those outside agencies now, so that if we have students, I can't speak much for without the district, but if they run a triangle between 3 schools, we have a system in place where they coordinate, and there's a warm handoff of professionals who've already been working on providing services and coordination for that student and that family.
Yeah, that's a good point, good idea that you're doing that, broadening it.
Thank you.
Ms. Bullock?
First, I want to apologize for being late. I thought I was gonna be on time, but as it turned out, it didn't work out that way. But anyway.
It happens over here sometimes, to me.
Yeah, I would like to say though, thank you for your support for our decision to not want to be included with the ISD. That, the ASD, excuse me, that process is not proven to be successful. In fact, it's been proven that it is not successful. And so we wanted to keep our school under our control so that we could best meet the needs of our kids who we know. These people don't know our children. And so it's good to hear you all stand up with us for that. We welcome that, and we hope that you will continue to support us in that decision, because we are working really hard to make sure that that school, and all our schools for that matter, do improve. So again, thank you.
Well, that goes without needing to be said, but I think our board jumped on that situation with you just as soon as we knew about it. And I hope we'll be there the whole time. Any other comments from anyone prior to moving on the agenda? Okay, great. Thank you, Dr. Jeffers. Good update on that.
Yes, sir.
Item 3 is discussion on the future Northern Nash Area Elementary School. And I don't quite know who would lead that.
We'll be happy
You've
to
got
start.
facilities, I
Yes,
think,
sir.
that have probably met since then, so please, go ahead.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our Facilities Committee started with exploration of a timeline for community engagement. That was endorsed by the full board at our March meeting. And basically, we've outlined a process whereby we'll actively solicit community engagement and establish the Board of Education guidelines for determining the process for facilities and a location. The process approved by the board will involve focus groups and at least one town hall where everyone gets to offer feedback and guidance to the board. After refining that community engagement feedback, the board will work to approve motions that define the specific changes to homeschool boundaries, consolidation of schools if that's one of the recommendations, transportation zones, and staffing. If approved, after that point, staff will work on working to address reassignments and any issues like a marketing plan, communication plan, and then transition meetings for all impacted staff. We will have another update at our April 12th board meeting about that process.
And the actual grant application that we're all very familiar with, I know y'all obtained a copy of the grant we spoke about at the meeting before last. Do you see some things there in looking at that we can do, Wayne, or whoever, that will help us improve that process?
I'll allow Mr. Miller to give you
Okay.
some feedback, and we appreciate the recommendation to pursue that. Go ahead, Mr. Miller.
Commissioner, we did get the copy of that application, and the application was very basic, and ours seemed to be a lot better. And I did contact that actual school just to ask for some advice in terms of next steps. And basically, they just said maybe invite the superintendent to come down to look at the space, but
The state superintendent.
the state superintendent. But other than that, the applications, I believe our application on the face of it looked a lot better than what was actually wanted at that time.
So we applaud the support and the guidance that you offered in quantifying our request versus the one that was approved. It didn't have much of the evidence, such as the photos that you were in. So those were, I think it made our ask a much higher quality ask. So I'm encouraged that we're going to at least be in the running once we pursue the process again.
I would make a statement off the record if I could, direct it towards the back table. You're already frowning, Amanda, but I'm not surprised at what you told me. Sometimes it seems like things are determined prior to just people gathering at the starting line, and I guess that's what you're dealing with here. But certainly, if that particular situation is now handled, we certainly, hopefully, will fall into a fair race where everybody has the same amount of horsepower at the beginning line. So I appreciate you continue working on that.
Thank you.
Back on the record, for what it's worth, ladies. Any other comments from anyone about that particular process? Dr. Jeffers, I just asked if you feel led to your board to keep us informed of any of those meetings. I just think there's several of us on our board, particularly probably Ms. Richardson and myself, can help you a lot with that process. And we have had a lot of conversations come to us already as the news leaks out about some of the things we're doing. So just keep us informed as you have these community meetings and so forth.
I'll defer to our board, but they expressed early on that they wanted us to actively solicit your support and cooperation with this process. So I'll defer to the board.
And we've had a discussion with our panel, our group, and we're looking for all the engagement that we can gather to muster up to get the support. And one of the things we're also, not only from your group and the commissioners, but also from our counties and our people in the area. That's why I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Jeffries, we're soliciting, we're posting it out on our website. We have those meetings and communicating that for them.
They are already on the website, some of them.
We have not yet started to set those protocols for
Okay.
that. But once we,
I can watch that.
We have an April 12th meeting before we start setting the timeline and making the
Gotcha.
public
so the
notification.
board has to come together, pull that together, right, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments, discussions on that? And anything we can help you with for the next application to be ready at the time it needs to be ready? We have offered before our grant writer on the county staff who just does wonderful things sometimes. So that offer will always be out there to help you with
We
that.
appreciate it, sir.
Sure. Next item is just a update on the early college that we're all very anxiously and very interested in.
I will definitely defer to Shannon Davis, who'll be able to provide you with some updates on the early.
Okay, and we have Mike Tolson here with us also.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Shannon.
How you doing?
Good, sir.
We're waiting for final approval DPI. I think we've had all of our processes set up there. I think we had a couple comments this week. We're expecting approval from them next week. A couple minor details on some of the science labs. Just we did conduct a pre-bid this week on the mechanical. Mr. Tolson, I invited him, and he showed we got 2 weeks. We'll get those numbers in. We do have a set of blueprints up here, inspections for review. We started putting numbers together, budget numbers, floor finishing, sheet rods, lights, everything we're doing in-house. So we're pretty much far along with the budgeting process. We're basically waiting now, pull all permits and wait for the building to be vacant. I'm understanding the new building's 2 to 3 weeks behind right now, which kind of is pushing us to possibly August, starting to do demo. We're still hopefully to be on schedule, depending upon when we get the building to still open. Phase 1, which is the 10 classrooms and the admin, January. Unless it keeps pushing us to where that becomes an issue.
Any questions on that?
I just want to make a comment. I appreciate the way these two men have been really collaborating together. It just shows the partnership when you put heads together from different venues. Shannon and Mr. Toshi, I appreciate you guys co-laboring together to make this thing happen.
I wanted to mention, if I may,
Sure.
I appreciate the invite to the pre-bid. You had a lot of heavy hitter HVAC guys in there yesterday. You should get some very good numbers based on the crowd and the questions that were being asked yesterday. So I think you'll have good things out of that pre-bid and out of that contract coming up, so.
Is what we're doing, Mike or Shannon, does that leave us with all new equipment on this building, or is that some of the equipment we've already replaced previously?
The heat and air piece, again, you know, we're pulling that section of the classrooms, not the admin. Actually, the admin, the new admin and the classroom section is on their chiller, the old
Right,
chiller.
that's what I was thinking,
We're
okay.
pulling all of that off. That'll be all new equipment, and the engineering side now will be all new equipment. So yes, sir, all new
Okay.
heat and air equipment in that building.
Okay. Well, that's where I hadn't heard you say, but I'm
Yes,
glad
it's totally
headed
renovated
in that
mechanical.
direction.
When you finish, what would be your capacity of students?
400.
Yeah,
I know we'll be doubling the
I had
capacity.
heard that, but I
Yes,
was
sir.
just wondering if it's on record, 400.
And if I may, just to make a comment, the numbers that I'm hearing of applicants to the early college this year among the rising freshman class were extremely high with what is it, about 1/4 got accepted. So it's just really exciting to hear about this project moving on, that we're going to be able to expand the early college and really accommodate a lot more students in that program, which I hear community-wide is just extremely strong, so.
Wendy, just to piggyback off that, I also heard from our business sector that we're working with. They're really excited about that development as well, because there's more people, more kids can actually get engaged in that process from the professional side. So that's a positive thing.
Mr. Lamb, think you can give us the update on the permitting issue, or you rather stay away from that till we
I'll
get
be
a
glad to
determination?
briefly
And
talk about it.
Who with the school system is aware of that potential issue, Mr. Davis? is
Mr.
okay?
Davis, yeah.
Okay.
We have,
Just to let you know, we're working on that on all fronts also, trying to resolve it.
I think there was inquiry by the school system about getting their permits, and it was indicated that given the total cost of the project, and the fact that the school system does not own the building, that they would have to hire a general contractor. So we've written the Attorney General's office, cited the early college legislation and reference to being on community college campuses, and trying to see if we can be allowed to have him be the general contractor and not add that cost to the project. Unfortunately, we're concerned that that information, that opinion, may take some time. And we're looking at other alternatives, including a transfer of the footprint and the building from the community college to the school system for a period of years. And once that work is done, at some point it could be deeded back if the college wants to do that, or it could just remain in the name of the school system. So that's an alternative. Another alternative was to get a general contractor who would, for a de minimis, or a minimal amount of money, supervise it, walk on the site occasionally. But we really think at this point, the best course is to do a deed from the community college to the school system, just that one footprint of the building. And so that's what we're looking at right now.
If I may, I have kind of made some arrangements. I have contacted a general just to see. So if we had to go that route, it is not a lot of money what he's doing, but of course the deed, I think, would be a much better.
That's kind of how I found out about it. Your general asked me why are they having to do that, and
Right.
when I dug in through my other job on the building code
Yes.
council, I realized that our inspection department was doing exactly what they should be doing. So we're gonna find a way to work through it.
Yeah, if the property is in the name of the school system, a general contractor is not required.
Right.
But even though we're all county
We're all under one umbrella.
we're different entities, and therefore a strict interpretation of the statute suggests you would need a general contractor.
And it looks like there's a possibility through the legislation on the early college itself. But in my prior and into that a little bit, a couple of weeks ago, or when I was in Raleigh, I just think it's gonna probably take too long to get that decision out of the Attorney General's office to help us any, quite frankly, so.
And it may not be a good decision.
And it may not be, it's got some problems. Just depends on how innovative the looker wants to get, but hopefully that'll work out fine. But we just trying to find a couple of backups.
Yeah, that has always been a concern of mine, on these grant projects, that you got to have a contractor there to oversee it. And when some of that, I just always believe could be done in-house, and you save a lot of money. That way, it's a lot to me that could be used for something else.
Well, it will, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I would just like to add to something that Ms. Wilson said about the excitement of the early college. I'm finding that might increase our enrollment because many of the students from the charter schools and some of the homeschoolers are making applications for the early college. So that would help to increase.
That might be one way to get them back then. huh?
Yes, that might be one way to get some of them back.
Right.
I was just gonna add that, we're gonna save money because y'all are handling this project, a lot of money. And, so, we appreciate the work y'all are doing to do
Absolutely.
that. That's all.
All right, next item on the agenda was full joint board meeting, which is scheduled for April the 24th at the community college. And I just put that there to remind us of it, and any final details we need to work out on it.
There was just some back and forth after the meeting, and I just want to verify this is a good date for everyone.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
We're
okay,
locked in.
We're all there, okay.
sounds good.
Are we doing school and community college
Yes,
review that night? Okay.
yes.
And we will have, it starts at what time? And 6, and we will have a meal there when we get there like we did last time?
Right.
Okay. All right. Any other comments about that? Dr. Jefferson, I just put on there because I just want to know if y'all are planning on meeting with the Edgecombe County Board of Commissioners, similar to what you do with us, as we have talked about numerous times in the past. Is that likely to happen this year?
Now, are you meaning, you're not meaning the legislatively required meeting?
No, sir.
You mean a similar format to this?
Yes, sir. A similar format to what we will be doing on the 24th.
Okay, yes. So that's required by law. So we've already scheduled. It's May 14th. We coordinated with Edgecombe County Manager and the Board of Commissioners, May 14th at 6 p.m. The location will be the Booker T. Washington Theater.
That's the meeting I was speaking of.
Okay, yes, sir.
I didn't recall that it was required by legislation, but I do now that you mentioned that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Item 7, I apologize for putting on there, and it's another attempt not to get in y'all's business on our board's part, but I keep hearing it from some of our board members, and I think we serve ourselves well from each side to just be upfront about things, and I would just say that our board would really like to do anything we could to keep from adding modular units. I've heard y'all say a couple of times, you may have to do this, you may have to do that. That is gonna be the least desirable thing that we would like to see county dotted dollars spent on, and whatever we can do together or whatever to keep that from happening. I guess the alternative is always gonna be redistricting, which is something that I guess we get lucky on. We have nothing at all to do with, and y'all would have to handle that. But just a very general comment that is said quite a bit in our budget process this year. So if you want to make any comment on my statement, that's fine. If you don't, I understand.
Certainly. And if you'll recall, this was, it reached a prominent point of discussion in the state because of HB 13. The first iteration would have meant a high volume of displacements, which would have required a combination of, but really redistricting alone wouldn't satisfy it. It was going to be both a high volume implementation of additional modulars and redistricting. And I want to share with you, Commissioner, my board, as well as our staff, echo that sentiment. It's always safer in brick and mortar. But fortunately, there have been some revisions to the legislation, and so we don't anticipate anywhere near the challenges. And I'll defer to Mr. Miller.
Absolutely. At this point, I would defer to Shannon Davis because he can give us more information on that.
Just a little background. I know many of you, I'm sure Mr. Davis knows, he's been here a while. We had over 120 buildings at one point before we started. In
120 modular.
Modulars, yes.
That's right.
We reduced those 2012 to 13 down to 59. Today, we have 20 buildings in the system. Of those 20, 5 of them we own, 15 we lease. And of the 15, 3 of those will be coming off the books, hopefully, end of this fiscal year, we'll be returning 3 of those. So that will leave us 12 rentals and 5 we own, system-wide.
Well, that's great progress. It is. And great progress headed in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any, Mr. Outlaw, Mr. Belfield, any more comment on that? Okay. All right, I just stuck number 8 on there, or we stuck, I used the word I, which I try not to do. I think I learned that process at home, in talking to my wife, but she uses it and I use it, and therefore we don't accomplish much, but, update on the budget process, Mr. Lamb.
Sure.
You wanted,
Sure.
we had our retreat, last week, I think it was, and by the time, week before last, excuse me, week before last, and by Monday, when we got back together, our regular commissioners meeting, we were tired of being around one another, but we did get through the meeting, commissioner meeting also.
Yeah,
So
3.
just to update on where we are on that.
Yeah, 3.
And understanding we've got number 9 next with some details on it.
Yeah. Yeah, we had our commissioners, well, we had a department head 2-day retreat at Rose Hill the couple weeks before, and then 2 weeks ago we had the budget work session. And our process is we go through the budget with all the departments, and continuation. The continuation budget comes out, and then all capital and position expansion requests go before the commissioners at their budget retreat. We did that process on, as far as outside agencies, such as nonprofits and the school board, school system, community college. We treat that differently, because legislatively, we have to hear from y'all formally, and that's what we will do on the 24th. The commissioners have scheduled another budget work session one day on April the 30th, and after y'all present 6 days later, and at that time, they will give us direction on funding levels for the school system. So the process is going pretty well. We haven't finished. We're still calculating our revenues and looking at sales tax as they come in. We had a bad month last month, so our 12-month our average went down a little bit, but hopefully next month they'll go up before we actually present the budget, so we can we basically budget for sales tax, which is right around $13 million, $14 million, based on what we've collected in the current year. So through 8 months, we'll divide that by 8, multiply it by 12, and that's what we pencil in for next year with no growth. So ad valorem taxes, we're doing well again this year. We're collecting at a all-time higher pace, and so we're having some new growth in the county. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to present the commissioners a budget in May that will keep the current funding levels, have some expansion, and also be able to limit the amount of fund balance that we need to use. We are going to have to use some fund balance this year, but I believe we're in a position financially to do that. As I think I presented to y'all before, we are very fortunate to have a very healthy fund balance. We're able to fund projects like the early college with existing funds rather than having to borrow money. And so, but we will be using some of that fund balance this year to balance the budget. That's about it.
All right.
Any
and
questions?
Any questions on where we are with our budget? And you noticed he looked at me and smiled when he got to the revenue side of it, because they have failed to share with us the revenue so far. We only have seen the expense side. We don't know where we got money or don't have money. We feel like we're being led down a dark road sometimes, but I'm sure we'll see the revenue side of it very soon.
You will.
It'll look good too.
Look good too. I sure hope so. We know it's trending up. We certainly know that. No doubt about that. Anything else on our budget process? Dr. Jeffers, any comment on where y'all are with y'all's budget?
Yes, sir. We've completed our small group budget Board of Education meetings in preparation for April 23rd. Final presentation to our board for approval for the April 24th presentation before the joint meeting.
You didn't leave yourself much room to work in there, did you?
It's a year-long process, but we're bringing it on the back stretch now.
Okay. All right. Great. The next item, pretty much Dr. Jeffries, is for y'all. Item number 9 is an update on the current expense side. We've talked a lot about capital thus far, yes, but we left it the last time. We talked some about teacher supplements, administrative salaries, and then of course, at y'all's request, we added a forecast for the investment in Nash-Rocky Mount Public School System. I'm not sure how much of that we can do tonight or this afternoon, but certainly go ahead with item A, and we're excited to hear what you got for us on that.
Well, and actually, but before I begin, I want to share that our board has been explicit in their desire that we be open and responsive to all requests. Last meeting, there was a request for the ranked principal and AP salaries. We've provided that, and there are some hard copies going around now. And they're really combined, A and B. We've talked in great detail about the cliff that we anticipate relating to administrative salaries, assistant principals and principals. And I imagine that will continue to be an explorative discussion with this committee. Ms. Blackwell, is there anything you want to share?
Not at this point. I think we have, you have covered everything. When we get a little further along, then we'll be able to share more.
Right now, the persistent challenge for us is meeting a funding gap that's created by the state increases. There's a matching component. That gap for the match is about 1.2 million, Mrs. Blackwell, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So we're working now to present our board with options on how we may need to make adjustments to be able to close that gap.
They're all the same.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Uh,
I got 2 more extras.
let everybody get caught up with the paperwork here. I know we discussed the last time, the principles, and then we got a little bit into the supplement side of it, and the wording used was, something along the line that to be able to employ some principals, you had to, what was the word you used?
There's a
No, not that word. I'm gonna get to that one in a minute, but the supplements are a wide range on the,
Yeah,
on those.
the disparity between them.
Disparity
And
is-
it was basically, I think only 3 of those were under my tenure, but the disparity is when you have transitions
Right.
for principals, say, who may have been serving in a central office capacity, but is willing to engage in our district, that's where trying to maintain comparable salaries, you'll see, or hard to fill vacancies, where you have high needs, high turnover schools, you'll see that accounts for the lion's share of that disparity in the supplements.
On this last one you gave us, you combined the assistant principals and principals all on one sheet. Is that what we've done, where they were 2 sheets before?
They're mixed in, correct.
They're mixed in together, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Blue are the principals, the green VPs.
Oh, okay.
Did you hear that,
I
sir?
got it.
So blue
Yes, sir.
is principal, green is AP.
Right. But it changed what I had wrote down on my notes for what questions I was gonna have, but that's okay.
Would you like it in another form?
No, I got it in the form you gave it to me originally. I'm
Okay.
good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm just really talking to myself, trying to get squared up with what I'm looking at now.
Yes, sir.
But, I think my surprise level, once I got this, was the disparity in the supplements for the principals. It was just a huge range. And, where do you get the money from for that range that's so far above the average? Where does that money come from? Is that county money? Is that state money?
It's local.
It's local money,
Yeah.
which is what I thought your answer was gonna be.
We've become even more hamstrung, Commissioner, with how limited that scale is for state. They've narrowed
Sure.
the scope, so it's gonna be a prevailing challenge in terms of recruiting the type of talent that we've been able to do with making those adjustments to local. That's really no longer an option for us because we have a much more rigid placement on the principal scale for the state that it really would equate to a cut for some of the talent that we're trying to recruit nationally, especially.
So the state sets the base salary.
Yes, sir.
And that's based on some kind of matrix.
It's a
I'm sure.
combination of the state assessment system
Right.
and enrollment.
Oh, enrollment, okay, I got that. But when you got a 38% supplement, I'm just looking at the highest one on the sheet, that just really limits you on the downside of what you can do to fill principalships.
It does, but if that is a high needs, comprehensive high school with the largest number of employees we have in the district, trying to get talent that already earning at a certain level, to ask them to take a pay cut isn't realistic. And then if the interview and exploration of candidates is separate. We do that first before looking at and that's appropriate because you want talent to prevail. So once you have the folks who win the process and are identified as the most exemplary candidate, when we get to the point of reconciliation of what will it take to secure them in that position, that's the challenge that we're confronting. If they're earning X dollars, can we make it at least comparable and still entice them to come join the work in Nash-Rocky Mountain?
So just to help Mr. Outlaw, Mr. Belfield, and myself, this whole process was started about a need potential in the next budget to help you continue to be able to fill your APs and your principals and the fact that the teacher salaries on the chart that we saw last time had it, so some teachers just weren't willing to do that. I see we've got, or I've got this morning early, an adjustment in that chart, which, is that just a correction on something we had, or what is that?
Susan?
Are you talking about the chart,
You gave us before, a teacher's salary, what they had to make if they had
Yes,
A, B,
and
and C.
I
And the
understood.
number was some $72,000 plus, which I'm not sure. I know I was just amazed, but, and I really questioned it in my own mind, of course. But now, what we got this morning in the email, that substitutes for the other one we got?
That is an updated version for clarity purposes, because I did misspeak that day. It was a 12-month, because in order to figure the held harmless, a principal works 12 months.
Mr. Outlaw, I need you to help explain this to me later, because I'm not keeping up. But are you keeping up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, go
A
ahead, I'm
principal
sorry.
works 12 months, so in order to get the held harmless yearly amount, we multiplied the teacher's salary by 12, because it has to be monthly, not yearly. And the increase has to show monthly. And, that's pretty well outlined in the, computation that the state gave us.
So if I understood what you said, and I have to say it a different way, but short and long of it, you took a monthly teacher's salary that met those three criteria, you multiplied it times 12, when really it should have been either 9 or 10.
Well, no, to compute the held harmless, you had to multiply it by 12, because a principal works 12 months. And it says on a monthly basis, the principal must make more than they would earn as a teacher.
So in this case, Commissioner,
Okay,
what I requested of staff was to identify an actual candidate to put a face on this process.
Gotcha.
The candidate, the principal that is newly promoted, met all of those credentials, national board, and to ask that professional to transition into the role, my commitment was that they should not lose pay to take on our most challenging role of the principalship.
sure.
So in
Misunderstood.
breaking down what that means when we transition to the new state salary schedule, that employee will be confronting the loss of those dollars. So that's what that example meant, and the mistake that was made was it was prorated 12 months.
Okay.
So a teacher is not a 12-month
Gotcha.
employee, they're 10 month. So that was the correction, not in change of the amount, but in explaining that it was a 12-month prorated salary for a teacher that meets those credentials.
So
Does that make
principal-
sense?
Yeah, I think so, if I've got it, but that principal, by taking that promotion, wouldn't lose dollars, but he's gonna make more dollars, but he's gonna be 12 months instead of 9 or 10. So that's what you're saying.
10.
No, that principal would lose money if this is your monthly salary as a teacher. You're not working the same number of months, so we're gonna have to continue to pay you for those 2 additional months. So that's how we get to the prorated salary, you follow me?
Yeah, well, I think we
So
said the
with
same
new-
thing.
With the new schedule, we wouldn't be able to pay that new candidate at that rate. It would amount to a stepping down of the salary and equate to a loss. The law offers a held harmless provision for 1 year where they can earn no less than they did.
And all of that's based on monthly rather than
Yes.
WT?
Go ahead.
And it is, and I can provide you the
Oh, no.
computation.
You-
No, it is, it says a principal must not make monthly less than they would a teacher.
Okay.
So that's the reason, the computation, and they actually even gave you an example of the computation, the best I remember.
I guess I'll ask
You get
him.
to say what you wanted to say?
Can I ask?
Got it.
I'm wondering, I think that figure ended up in the paper the next morning, one of the papers. Did you have any teachers come looking to check that they were behind, I guess, maybe?
We didn't get a flood or influx of folks
Get a
inquiring
flood,
about it.
okay. All right. Mr. Lamb?
Yeah, let me make sure I understand it. So you're saying a teacher who elects 10 months' pay instead of 12 months' pay? Is that, and say makes $6,000 a month, let's just use that figure. When they become a administrator, they must continue to make $6,000 a month.
If they keep their certifications.
So
If
even
they're
though had they elected to get paid over 12 months.
And that's what muddies the
No.
the salary doesn't change. When you elect to get paid over 12 months,
Right.
your salary is
Stays
still a
the same.
10-month salary. That's
Hey,
not
right.
that's not the same
Right.
as the transition to the print. I didn't want to confuse
Yeah.
Oh, your
the
dollars will be
issue.
the same, I understand.
Yeah, your
that.
dollars are the same, so
Right.
if you elect 10
Let's
months.
say your W-2s to say.
Say you're making $6,000 a month, if you chose to get paid over 12 months, you'd get $5,000 a month. Now, what is the hold harmless based on?
Okay, it is based on.
I know it's the same number, say
Yeah,
60,000.
It is the state salary manual, okay? I can elect to be paid 12 months, that's my option.
Right,
But I can also elect to be paid 10 months.
right.
But it is based on what is in the teacher salary month, what they make per month. And it is confusing unless you look at the examples they gave you, but I'll be glad to provide those to y'all so you can actually see the example DPI sent you, or sent us.
Yeah.
So exactly what we went by to calculate it.
So just to clarify though, that's not apples to apples because there is no 12-month teacher salary scale at the state level. By LEA, you get to offer that or not.
Correct.
It's
That's
a
right.
10-month,
That's
so
close.
That's 10 months, right?
it's 10 months. When they make the transition from a 10-month position to a 12-month position, that's the gap. That's that held harmless provision. And with the adjustments based on enrollment and the combination of the assessments, some principals, once this held harmless provision expires, sunsets, will be in the same school doing the same work for less money.
That's what I was saying, it's based on the salary schedule in the manual, not
Correct.
divided by 12.
But there is no 12-month
No,
salary schedule
no.
anywhere
So-
for state. That's an option that employees get.
So
to
the state salary schedule, based on a 10-month year, say again, the example, $6,000 per month for 10 months, 60,000 total. When you compute it on the hold harmless formula, it must be 6,000 a month or 60,000 a year.
6,000 a month.
So they become a 12-month employee,
That's an
so
additional
you have to
12,000.
give them $72,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you have a principal now that is making less than a teacher in that category?
We cannot. We might have some APs.
You don't have any principals?
No principals. That's what the held harmless was last year. They couldn't make less.
And that goes away
Yes, sir.
Sunsets.
this year.
This year,
And the number that you gave us that we saw,
250,000 is the equivalent of all of the impacted administrators. Ladies, can you cue in for me? Is 250,000 is what we anticipated that impact? Yes.
what's the 130 that I remember, Dr. Jeffers?
Is it 135,000?
Yeah, 130 something.
Okay, 135,000.
Let's just play with that number a little bit so
Yes,
our
sir.
board understand it. So it's 135,000.
Yes,
That's
sir.
what it takes you to stay even. Is that reoccurring every year when everything stays the same, just like it is? Of course, it's not gonna do that, but that's got to be reoccurring.
People are gonna come and go.
And I hate to give you a squishy answer, but it's squishy because we have natural attrition, and
Sure.
as we bring on new candidates, Commissioner, we're gonna hold hard and fast to the state schedule.
I'm trying, my question
So
was-
that pool will diminish potentially as those candidates transition on. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
that-
some of it will be recurring.
Correct.
Some
If
of it
they
will be.
stayed if that
Well, I was just
pool
gonna-
doesn't change.
Well, you
it-
notice I said if everything were to stay the same,
Yes,
which I
sir.
understand it's not, that number would just be reoccurring. But it's gonna move one way or the other every year. It should be.
It'll move down every
Should
year.
be moving down.
Yes, sir.
Well, should be, but with the, increase in the salaries, it may not. Depends on the
Yep.
Hence-
And the number of years the principal has that.
Hence more squishiness. So we're trying to limit the squishiness right now, and we'll continue to update you on that.
Mike?
I don't want to muddy the waters, but one of the things that might help with this clarification of the principal salaries and the discrepancies between the supplements that I'm aware of, and Susan, the way the formula reads now that just started last year, the state salaries for principals are going to be basically the same depending on the school and whether the school's low performing or not. That's the formula. In the past, and why we got into this situation, because I have some historical perspective here, we got into this situation that the supplements are sparing, is because if we would hire a principal that has 30 years, because the salaries were based on years of experience. The more experience you have, the more money you make. But if we had a real young principal who was doing a really good job, and we wanted to promote him to the high school, they were going to be rated based on their experience level. So in order to get them up to and if you look at the salaries, I'm assuming, we didn't put the schools here, but if you look at some of these total monthly salaries, they were raised to try to get them up to where our principals were at the high schools, where we're essentially the same number of students at each school and the same kind of problems, same kind of issues, trying to get them to make the same salaries. But now, since it's changed, some of this will work itself out over a period of time. Like Dr. Jeffries alluded to, he's only had 3 since he's been here that he's had to make some kind of adjustments with. So that's why we have these disparities now, but that's going to eventually take care of itself because it's not based on years of employment anymore, which either could be a good thing or a bad thing.
And also, I'd like to add, in the past, if you're reciprocal with another state and a principal comes in, that salary would be your salary once you came, let's say, from Virginia to North Carolina. So they try to keep you by making it reciprocal to the state that you transferred from.
That's y'all's choice to try to do that. I mean, the state
So-
doesn't tell you got to do that.
No,
I
that's
wouldn't think.
the-
Okay,
The locals.
sure. I mean, to recruit good talent, understand you got to think like that anyway. We're really dealing with A and B at the same time.
Yes, sir.
Any other comments? Mr. Outlaw, you got any other thoughts there, or any questions you got?
Not any I want to
Mr.
share
Belfield?
right now.
Okay, you guys gonna go study some, I guess, Mr. Belfield?
No, I've got some comments I'll share with you later.
Okay, all right. Mr. Belfield?
No,
Okay.
I'm fine right now.
Dr. Jefferson, anything else y'all want to talk about on those 2 items?
No, sir.
Okay. Zay, I don't know what to do with C, other than you gave an update with your budget. We are still, the board itself is still not totally been appraised of revenue, so we don't quite know where we are. I just see no way we could give you any kind of accurate forecast sitting here today of what our investments in Nash-Rocky Mount public school system will be, other than to say we intend to do as much as we can do inside of a balanced budget. We're in the state of North Carolina, and they have to have a balanced budget, and we feel like we've got to have one as well. Of course, fund balance comes into play there. I've said this before, but I do want your board to understand that one of our biggest fund balance expenditures this next year will be on the extension of internet throughout the county, and we don't know what that number is yet, but it could trend in the $4 million range, and that is to help y'all as well as our home-based workers. So, we may be investing money in your public school system and it not be in your budget, out of our fund balance. We hope to have that resolved, to be sure, the next 60 to 90 days anyway. But we've been saying that for 6 months, but, we're trying very hard on that one. I will say that you mentioned we were on a tight schedule. The whole board will be leaving to go to Elizabeth City for our district association meeting this afternoon. And that's the place where we get to update the rest of the counties and also hear what issues they've got. They're always real good meetings. We've got a couple things that we intend to bring up about problems we've got in Nash County. One of them concerning our sheriff's department with transports involving voluntary commitments, which has just spiked tremendously. And we're gonna seek out some help through the association with that and just see what other counties are doing. Anything in the public school arena that we can ask tonight that maybe find out anything on?
And I haven't had a chance to solicit my board, but it's been an ongoing focus for our Board of Education, and that's safety. Fortunately, Nash-Rocky Mountain has been very well positioned as it relates to target hardening, what we've done with IED doors, and that's been funded by the commissioners, so we're truly grateful.
What was the first word you said, targeting?
Target hardening, making the brick and mortar a more difficult target.
Okay.
For folks who have ill intent, for
Gotcha.
faculty and students.
Understood.
Okay? We've done very well as a district, and that's through the leadership of the Board of County Commissioners and funding those increases and advancements. Safety has always been a point of concern. It's been on an uptick recently, and I'm very appreciative in this format where you all have kind of checked the pulse as it relates to Nash Central and offering support. I'd like us to be able to explore in future meetings the potential of increased support district-wide. And I'm not quite sure the form, and I want everyone to know that Sheriff Stone is a phenomenal support to our schools, as are the other municipalities. One of the challenges we have is coordination between those. They do a yeoman's task, but maybe if we're able to have support in terms of, I don't know if it would be a professional or what, to work on that coordination, someone with a law enforcement background. And Sheriff Stone, I'm speaking out of school, I apologize, we haven't had a chance to discuss this, but also increased SRO presence. There's a great deal of banter going on about arming teachers. I'm of the philosophy, you get the best talent doing what they're trained to do. And rather than arming teachers, it's more appropriate that we increase the presence of SROs, that maybe that would be a point of discussion in the future for this forum. That would be my request.
Okay.
Dr. Jeffrey, wouldn't that be taken up with, because we do have a facilities and safety group
We
committee
do.
that we're working to formulate some type of what you're.
I think he was really answering a today's request that I made.
He asked, as they go to the statewide meeting, what are some of those issues, so they can find out from others. Yeah, I wasn't trying to put the cart before the horse.
Right, it's something that we will certainly listen to tonight and see if it comes up and what other counties are doing. There'll be 13 counties there is what it'll be, according to the agenda that we have. Mr. Lane?
Yeah, on the SROs that we currently have, I know when they first started that, they were in the high schools only. The state funds that gives y'all the money, and then y'all pay the sheriff's department to provide the SROs. Has that been extended state funding for the middle schools, or do we just
Mr. Farrell?
fund it locally?
I'm not sure if that funding for SROs for the middle schools come from the state or not. What I can say is that all of our middle schools do have SROs in,
Right.
as well as all of our high schools, but I could get with
I can
Susan
answer
and
that now.
you can answer the thing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
At-risk funds is traditionally what paid SROs. At the beginning, they set aside a certain amount.
One per school, I think it was.
Now, they don't do that, they don't allocate that way. So we pay it all out of 69. All the, of course, as always, the more we spend on SROs, or the more we have to spend on SROs, takes away from something else that we can purchase.
By 69, she does mean out of state money.
Yes.
Thank you. That was my next question.
Sorry.
And that 69 money used to only be able to be used for remediation. Remediation only when it first came out, because I
That's
managed
correct.
that budget. It's 1.5 million. And only remediation could be used out of it. Now the state's making us pay all kinds of stuff out of it.
But didn't increase the money, Rob.
No, it didn't increase the money.
So you said it was out of state money, so it's
It is
federal
out of
money?
state. No, it is out of state allotted.
It
Oh,
comes out of the
Out of the
state.
state. Okay, I got you.
Not out of
I
state.
got you. I got you.
I wanna know what states contributed to that.
No, I thought it might be federal monies, you know.
Sheriff
Also,
Stone, excuse me, go ahead. No, you go ahead.
If I could piggyback on what Dr. Jeffrey said, with today's climate being what it is, I would also, if it's okay with the rest of my board, that you might question at your meeting this evening what the thoughts are about even having SRO officers at elementary schools. Because today's climate is really not about the age anymore. We have it in all ranges, elementary, middle, and high school. So I would be interested in knowing what the thoughts are even about increasing SRO officers in the elementary schools as well.
And I'm so glad to hear Mrs. Bullock raise that point, because typically there's a visceral response about putting SRO officers in elementary, a knee-jerk reaction.
Thank you.
And that knee-jerk reaction is often off target because we're not trying to increase a punitive environment. Resource officers are the front line for teaching citizenry, building trust with our community, making sure that they understand that this is a safe place and that these officers are focused on safety in the school and throughout the county. So it's a real, there's an educational component that we'd be able to benefit from as well.
Dr. Jeffries, I just want to comment on that because I commend the sheriff because you guys are doing a phenomenal job. But I've heard parents who say, because of the SRO officers inside the schools, they feel more safer, more secure for their children because those kids go right to SRO officers and they communicate some problems that they're having inside of school where they may not vent to other parents, but they will talk to SRO officers. So it's a great link, it's a great liaison between the students and the staff itself.
And I'm sure y'all work on this kind of thing through your association.
Yes,
as
sir.
well.
Yes, sir.
More funding.
For more funding, yes. Sheriff, did you have any comment? I see you sitting here today. Anything you want to add about, any comment on this safety issue itself?
On the safety issue, I spoke at Nash Central Elementary. I was with the superintendent. A lot of concern about target hardening. You can't do so much target hardening as we went through some different things, but I think the vigilance, I think the camera systems, the sterile environment where that you have the ability to recall conversations by having it all recorded, I think that helps in a lot of it too. What we've seen across America, these guys just didn't open up one day and do these type things. There's conversations of it. Also, if you video these schools, it'll cut down on the bullying. And I think a whole lot of this stuff can be recalled back where you can go back and play it on video. And then it's not two people's words, you got two people that are dismissed from school. The perpetrator is actually held accountable. But I'm willing to work with you any way I can on the school resource officer. We're trying to get them into the positions where we're going by the schools more and keeping that vigilance there.
We appreciate it, sir.
All right. Well, we can certainly continue that conversation. I think we're all, in whatever jobs we have, I know on my code council with the state, it's certainly a very hot point right now about schools and the building codes as it relates to schools and what we do moving forward. And you hear some pretty far out things, and I think basically what the sheriff said, if you push hardening too far, you end up sending your kids almost to a institutional or prison type environment, which is not gonna be desirable for every parent as well also. Any other comments? We are at the end of the agenda and pretty much at the end of the time we've got. Mr. Belfield?
There was one that I was gonna ask, how involved are you in early preschool, early childhood education? Are you at all, are you coordinating with any of the agencies out here that?
We do. With NC Pre-K and Down East Partnership is a very robust partner for the district. And that's gonna be a point of focus at Williford as well, expanding our pre-K offering. So early literacy training, early access to physical and mental health, all of those are part of those tools that help to increase student achievement. So that's a point of focus for us as well.
Very important. The legislature, in my opinion, is not funding it where I think it should be. Because at first, they weren't even concentrating on preschool. Their concentration was on K through 3. But if your kid gonna start off in kindergarten, already behind, most likely gonna remain behind for the next 12, 13 years.
Research has borne that out, sir. Yes, sir.
And so we just got to keep watching it and keep pushing that the people in authority up there in the legislature and the legislature itself understand this and see the need to get these kids. They keep saying, well, the schools are not performing this and that, but let's get these kids in school prepared to start right away. And it's going to require preschool, early child education involvement by community parents and everybody.
Mr. Outlaw?
Just a quick question back to SROs. Do you have any, you don't have SROs in elementary schools. Do you see any benefit in an SRO in a high school or middle school being unpredictable in that they would rotate to the elementary schools at some point in time and back? For example, if I'm over at the middle school in Red Oak, then adjacent to Red Oak Middle is an elementary school. So the unpredictability of when that officer would be there, would that provide any, I know they do that, I think, up in Franklin County, I've heard.
I think they do it in one school, but I would be very anxious not to do that for the simple fact is, I have a problem now with several of our schools where we're actually having direct traffic and not into schools. I think that officer needs to be inside of the school instead of directing traffic on the outside of the school.
So you're directing traffic
We
now
are, because
instead
of
of
bad traffic
providing
problems.
the security that you're supposed to be providing?
That is correct. Well, it is a safety because people getting in and out of school at Northern Nash High School and at Red Oak, even rain, shine, lightning, whatever it is. You know, these guys are up at the front.
Is that with buses or
It's for
people
traffic.
coming in?
It's for
or-
traffic.
Well,
The
that's not,
traffic
that's not,
patterns.
that's not a good, that's not a good thing.
Highway Patrol 10 years ago, I visited then as the first sergeant on Highway Patrol, tried to work with DOT to get it corrected, we didn't, and that's a concern now. But I think these school resource officers need to be moving about in the schools. And,
Well, I agree, they need to be moving about, and I just thought the possibility of, adjacent buildings, but
But
if
then they
they're
can
moving
look
about
real
to handle
quick.
traffic instead of
Right.
security, that's,
I used to say that at Edwards Middle School. We had the biggest traffic jam ever at the end of the school day. And if people are vulnerable, you talk about hard targets. And if you looked at that part, the Florida issue, is when school is taken out is when people can get into buildings. I mean, we have them all locked down until the end of the school day, and everybody floods out of the buildings to get to the bus stops and that sort of thing. And if you got your police officer, your resource officer out there directed traffic, there's nobody within the confines of the building that has any kind of,
And coming in the morning time, he's out there directing traffic in the school system, but that's things we do.
and I have a little different view on that prison concept in an elementary school by locking it down. Because those kids, for the most part, unless they're going out to recess or something, going out the building for some reason, they don't have a clue whether that school is locked or wide open. But if it's open and not secured, then to me, that is a tremendous risk to the safety of the students and the administration and faculty in that school. So I just don't buy into that prison
The
concept.
prison concept come about when we were talking at this last meeting with actually talking about putting fences around them and all
I
that.
don't think anybody, I've never talked about putting a fence around, but I do think that you need to secure your perimeter entrances.
And
That's
you're
my opinion.
also gonna have to change the window setups when you do that.
Whatever.
because Of obviously.
Whatever,
raising
because I
resistance.
know they had good camera system in Parkland, but it didn't prevent 17 kids from being killed.
And also with the windows where you
A
can.
total,
bust
a
windows
total
around.
breakdown of the procedures down there probably led to that situation.
And early intervention.
Yeah.
Let me, Mr. Lamb wanted to add one more question, then I'm gonna close this. He drives too fast already. I don't wanna take any more time away from him.
Elizabeth City.
Elizabeth City. Go ahead with your question.
Currently, and I know it supplants other funding opportunities, but your at-risk dollars, is it greater than the total cost for your two police agencies?
Yes.
It's more than that.
Oh, yeah, it will be more than that. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I think it's been a great meeting. The safety thing will certainly be put on the agenda for continued discussions. Dr. Jeffers, y'all will host the next meeting on a rotation basis. I would like to leave with a date if we can, because we seem to work better if we do that.
I think we broke up the rotation by hosting 2 in a row, so
Yep.
you all get 2 in a row unless you want us to, it's fine.
I'd like to just get it rotation, because we ain't
That'll
remember who
work.
had 2 in a row.
That'll work.
Maybe we can
That'll
remember one. If you go the 3 weeks we've been going, it's the 2nd of May or the 9th of May. Just a little feedback on where everybody is.
We meet the
The 2nd is on a
5th.
Wednesday. Excuse me.
No,
Well, 2nd of
No.
May is out for me.
7th.
I'm already
We meet on the
scheduled.
7th. Yeah, I keep messing up May for some reason.
The 2nd and 9th are Wednesdays in May. I've heard a couple of 2nds don't work. Could we concentrate on the 9th?
I'm looking at my board. Does
I
the
got
9th
you.
work for you
Sure.
all? Madam Chair? 9th work, so are we targeting 3, you all said?
Yeah, we'll go back to 3.
Okay.
What, 3 o'clock? Okay, 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock, May 9th. Mrs. Rogers?
It's better for working people.
Yep. That's your place, Dr.
Yes,
Jefferson.
sir, we'll host. Mr. Lamb and I will work on the agenda mobily.
And if you'll just, send it to us a few days ahead of time like we did this time,
Yes,
let us
sir.
adjust or add to anything we want on there.
We'll do it.
All right, anything else?
Let me just say thank you, Mr. Lamb. I appreciate your cooperation. I thank you, really appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate your input.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all, we stand adjourned.